Hello, this is Rachel from 7 and All, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about some of the highlights from the books that we've read aloud this past year in our homeschool. This video is in collaboration with my friend Katie from channel Life in the Mundane, so I'll be linking to her channel in the playlist down below because she's gathered up a bunch of us to just geek out over the books that we read to our kids. So let's get started. Now, my kids are little and I very intentionally decided not to really focus on chapter books during this past school year. This was my son's kindergarten year, my oldest son's kindergarten year, my younger son was in preschool. So you'll see a few books that look a little bit more like chapter books, but a lot more in the picture book realm. So here's some of my recommendations. Now, I did use some literature-based curriculums, so some of these books will be coming from certain curriculums, and others were just ones I picked out and wove into our morning time reading sessions. Now, I did do gentle and classical preschool with my youngest son this past year, and these were a few standout books from that. Zin Zin Zin, a violin, super fun, and because during gentle and classical primer, we learn a lot of the names of the instruments. This is one that we've come back to read and reread. It's fun, a fun one to read aloud as you can point out the different instruments. It's rhyming, there's counting, altogether a fun book. Now this is a book that when it came up scheduled in gentle and classical preschool this time, I was actually really sad because I had not purchased this book. And when we watched the YouTube video of it, it was so fun. And I was like, I wish I had this book. And this is where it's nice to just have awesome people in your life, because my sister, who lives in China, was actually able to order this book online. Where I live, none of our online ordering options had it that shipped to us locally, so I couldn't order it for myself. But my sister, who lives in China, was able to order it online and bring it to us for Christmas this past year. So now we have this book. This is also just a really fun book to read aloud. It's a family going for a day at the lake, and their car has some issues, and they fix it in some silly ways, very appealing to young children. Silly sounds that get made, just imaginative, fun, and silly. This is one that I'm glad that we finally have the physical version, and I'm thankful to my sister for seeing my sadness about not having this book and finding a way to get it for me. For my oldest, his kindergarten year was focused on reading books from around the world, and we were using Beautiful Feet books around the world. You can watch my review for my more complete thoughts on that program, but I did want to bring out just a couple of books that we really enjoyed from different countries and different cultures that we were learning about. One standout book was Coolies by Yin, and this is actually not so much taking place in China, but taking place in America, and the role of Chinese workers in building the Transcontinental Railroad. Very interesting and a very emotional story, actually. It was very hard to hold it together while I was reading this story. But powerful, powerful book. Definitely worth looking into, finding from your library, whether you're looking at learning about Chinese immigrants in America or the Transcontinental Railroad and that period in US history. What a great book. Super Grandpa is based on the true story of an old gentleman, an elderly gentleman, who joined in the Tour of Sweden bike race, not officially, but on his own, and did some pretty impressive feats in a long bicycle race. This was a very fun read and inspired by a true story. Then, when we were studying England, the United Kingdom, we did William Shakespeare and the Globe by Aliki. Aliki has a number of educational illustrated books that are really cool and well beloved in the homeschool world for good reason. So this is a longer, pretty detailed picture book about the life of William Shakespeare, the history of the Globe and other theaters like it in London, and some modern history as well regarding that. But there was a great little introduction to Shakespeare, and I definitely think that this is one book that we will come back to in the future when we start diving into some of the plays that Shakespeare wrote. So you know how I usually have bird noises in my videos? I also have a little friend here staring at me today, so you might hear some background noise. and Antarctica by Helen Coucher. This is a very engaging book. Here's a ferocious leopard seal. If you have kids that love animals, Antarctic animals, this is a very engaging book and a great story, one that we read many times. Then this book was not actually part of any of our curriculum. Slow Down, Bring Calm to a Busy World with 50 Nature Stories. This is a book I'd seen a lot on Instagram. Sometimes the pretty books on Instagram don't actually measure up to being all that useful educationally or all that enjoyable to read. But this one really did. I loved this book. So we just read straight through it, reading 1 2-page spread at each morning time for several months this school year, and it's really nice. It's not just random animal facts. Each 2-page spread is a mini story. It's a nature process of sorts. So this one is dew collects on a leaf, or a butterfly emerges from a chrysalis. A duck teaches her ducklings how to swim. There's quite a variety, but what I really like is that it's not just fun facts. It's actually a process or a moment or some little thing that happens in nature. One creature hunting for its food. Really enjoyed this. It's enjoyable to read and actually educational. So I found this very enjoyable to read, and it didn't have that fun fact feel. It had the feeling like you could actually learn about these processes through reading this book and enjoy the beautiful illustrations. Sometimes your mom is just too far away, even when she's right next to you. So we're trying something else here, but let's continue. Another chapter book that we have used this year, we've already read it once, probably about a year ago, and we've recently started rereading it again with our Gentle and Classical Primer, is Little Pilgrim's Big Journey. And this is a children's version of Pilgrim's Progress. You don't normally think of Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan as being like a thrilling tale that 4, 5, and 6-year-olds will really get into and be hanging on every word, but this book accomplishes that feat. It's very well done. It is divided into chapters, so as I'm getting through the chapters, when I get to the end of one, my children are asking me, please, please, can we read one more? Can we read one more? They want to know what happens next. They're hanging in on it. And at the end of each chapter, there's opportunities to talk about what's going on, the decisions being made, the characters, the symbolic characters being introduced. So I've been very impressed with this retelling of Pilgrim's Progress. This edition is published by Lithos Kids, and I am an affiliate with Lithos Kids right now, so you can use code Rachel10 to get 10% off any orders from their website. So if you are looking for a Pilgrim's Progress edition, I highly recommend this one. Now, Katie encouraged us to include some read-alouds that were not a really big hit in the homeschool. That was kind of hard to think about because I feel like there were a lot of books that, hey, they were okay. They weren't bad. They weren't necessarily our biggest hits, but they were okay, and I don't have anything bad to say about them. But then I thought of this one. And this is probably going to be maybe the most controversial thing I've said in a while on this channel, but I have finally come to the conclusion after reading through Beatrix Potter stories several times with my oldest when he did Gentle and Classical Primer, with my younger son right this year when he's done Gentle and Classical Primer. I've come to the decision that I am not a fan of the Beatrix Potter, Peter Rabbit stories, Benjamin Bunny, Jemima Puddle Duck, and I've read them in Spanish and I've read them in English, so it's not a language issue. I guess they just don't click for me. I know that many people do love them or enjoy them, but for me, I'm kind of reading them going like, what? I don't know. All of us have tales and stories that we just don't end up clicking with for whatever reason. That's okay. And I still think, hey, I'm glad I read my children Beatrix Potter. I think it plays enough of a role in the general cultural knowledge that they should know some basic Beatrix Potter stories, but I don't love them myself, and I'm okay with acknowledging that. All right, so there I have shared some of our biggest hits as far as the books we've read aloud this year. In this next school year, we're actually going to be getting much more into reading actual chapter books. I've held off on them because I wanted to wait till my second son was old enough so my boys could really enjoy getting into some wonderful classic chapter book stories and read alouds together. So I'll link down below to my read aloud plans for this next school year if you want to see what we will be reading. But I hope that you enjoyed this video. Share with me down in the comments below what was one of your top books you read aloud this year and what was one of your least favorite books you read aloud. I want to know. I'll be seeing you next time. Bye.